Welcome to the Eternal Optimist podcast today. Friends, thanks for coming by. Today we have an amazing person on the podcast. Her name is Adair Cates. Adair has been instrumental in teaching, guiding, mentoring me in the art of exchange facilitation. She's a leadership development expert. She's great at asking questions. She has two adorable 7-year-old twin daughters that happen to be at home during this interview that we have. And at the conclusion of the interview, after we turned the recording off, the daughters came in and they were organizing a file folder system. I love it because my daughter's doing the same thing. Amazing interview with Adair Cates today. Some of the things we're going to hear about the one thing that many of us as entrepreneurs fear the most, and that might be failure in business. And Adair, as successful as she is today in serving hundreds, if not thousands of people in her current business, she went out and failed flat on her face her first entrepreneurial venture. And this is so scarring to her and so scarring to many of us that we never get back on our feet. She chronicles the way that she has lifted herself up from that challenging experience, how she goes forward, how she's obsessed with learning, and everything is an opportunity to learn. She talks about self inquiry. She gives us some tips and insights into a morning routine that is a little bit different in her journaling than I've ever heard before. And it's amazing. And I believe it's something that everyone here will take value from. She opened up a part of me today in the discussion that allowed me to ask myself the question, uh, what am I asking inside of myself? What will it take for me to get to that place over there? What does the universe bring to me? There are so many questions that she asks today that we can find value from. So sit back and get ready to hear an energetic conversation, one that has deep insight involved. And team, I hope you enjoy this interview with Adair Cates.
Hello, and welcome to the Eternal Optimist Podcast, the show for optimists by optimists. This is the show for people who see the good in the world and want to make a positive difference in the lives of their families and communities. Each week, you'll hear inspiring stories that will get you thinking bigger and playing more offense in life. With your host and high-performance coach, Matt Drinkon.
Welcome to the Eternal Optimist Podcast, Adair Cates. Adair, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well. It's really awesome to be here with you, Matt.
Well, likewise, and we haven't had too many chances to connect like this one-on-one and have a deep discussion. And I want to say a couple things first about our origin story. When I first met you, it was March 2021. You are a master supreme exchange facilitator. That's the way that I know
Well, thank
you.
you, Matt. Thank
Someone
you.
who someone who's helped to train me and teach me and guide me in the art of appreciative inquiry and asking great questions and facilitating things. And this has permeated into every part of my life, my
Mm.
business and personal life. So
I
I
just have
wanted to
to
just
say, it's been so awesome to watch you just take off with exchange and really not only lead in your own business, but become a leader in the exchange community as well. So it's been an honor to watch you, Matt, go through that process and become that.
well, humbly, thank you. And I'd say, just because we always say "and" in exchange, we always build on things. We don't shut it
Yes,
down, make it
and
small. We expand. Yes, and uh, exchange has been transformational in my life. I love the philosophy of always expanding, thinking bigger, thinking inclusively, bringing it all together with questions that offer limitless potential. And it truly does go into every aspect of my life. So thank you for that, Adair. Let's put you on the spot.
bring
When
it.
I think of you, there are three three words that came to mind. First, I'll give you the runner-up. The runner-up word that came to mind was stylish, because every time I've seen you, you've always had some stylish background, some stylish, like your nails, your glasses, candles. Everything is always pretty darn stylish. So that's the runner-up. The real, when I think of you and what you inspire, these are the three things that came to mind. Number one, inspiring. Number two, masterfully articulate when teaching. And number three, light bringer.
Mm.
Those are three things that came to mind. So, having shared that and hearing that, I'd love to hear, what does our audience need to know about you as we dive in today?
Well, first, let's start with the runner up, the style. Thank you for that compliment. I really I am really tuned into aesthetics. So I'm a very high aesthetic person. So for me, it's like if I look down at my nails and they're not done, it just takes away a little piece of my energy. Or if I'm in my home and the books aren't organized by like, Roy G. Biv color order, I just don't feel quite as peaceful. I'm very like aesthetic and space particular. So it's natural that I kind of have that sense of style because I like for all the pieces to fit together in a certain way. It makes me feel at peace. It makes me feel balanced. And it kind of like connects with what I love about facilitation as well is there's a certain like order and methodology and way of guiding people and leading people and presenting questions that are accessible and relevant that makes it seamless. And so, facilitator, I'm a Spanish speaker. I love languages and I learned Spanish studying abroad in my 20s. And fácil in Spanish, so I'm sure it goes back to Latin, means easy. A facilitator is there to make things easier in the meeting, in the group. So I think of this sense of organization and order and style and aesthetics. For me, it makes my life easier. I feel ease, I feel peace. And, I've heard other people say that they feel those things when they're in my home, in my physical space, and also when they're in my online space at an event that they almost feel this sense of just kind of like, okay, this person's going to guide me along. I'm going to be taken care of. I'm held. I'm safe. So I don't know if that resonates, makes sense, or who knows.
Well, completely, because in my experience on the other side of the microphone camera and being someone that's learned from you is it is incredibly easy to be in your presence.
Thank you.
You do include people, you do make things accessible. You're an excellent facilitator. I can sing your praises all day. Your background is memorable. I mean, the things about you that make you strong in your business. And the things that are about you that make you warm in life in general, they're very obvious when someone first meets you. And I'd love to kind of look at the timeline of your life and look at how did you get to become this amazing businesswoman? Because our audience, we want to share real stories about many of the challenges that people underwent in the early years, adult years, and now, and helped us understand. I mean, how did you get to be so successful as a human, successful as a leader? That's the way that I view you. But I'd love to hear some of the backstory of the shaping experiences. If you
Sure.
could start, yeah, start wherever you'd like to. Some opportunities to share earlier in life.
Yeah, sure. So I would say first and foremost, I'm a learner. I love
Hmm.
to learn. I am totally obsessed with how the mind works, how we create our lives. I'm very much in the belief of this life is a co-creative dance with spirit, with the divine, with God, with whatever you want to call a higher being, and that we have the ability to um, work with that energy in order to intentionally create what we're looking to create. And that's not to say that we're in control in any any way, shape, or form. I think it is a co-creative dance. I think our soul has a journey that we are meant to go on in this lifetime. And some of your listeners might think, whoa, that's kind of out there and a little crazy. That's my personal philosophy. And you don't necessarily have to believe that. However, this idea of learning, I love to learn new things and I love to then share whatever I've learned with other people. So I'm a natural learner and I'm a natural teacher. And in fact, I would say when I mentioned I learned Spanish in my 20s, it creates the perfect example of the conditions that I like to learn in. I had taken years of Spanish classes And like I would have said, I can kind of carry on a conversation, but that wasn't enough for me. I wanted to go live in Spain for a semester of college and actually immerse myself in the language, in the culture to learn. And I ended up
Well,
staying.
c could you speak it when you went
I
there, or
mean,
you took classes,
I
but could you
thought
speak it?
I thought that I could speak it, but I will tell you when I got into the class and everything was in Spanish and the teacher came to call on me, I froze, I forgot everything and I like blurted something out in English because I was so embarrassed. So, I didn't know very much, but I was determined and I stayed there for a whole year and I ended up going back after I graduated. So, this idea of learning through immersion, putting myself in the experience. And that's humbling. It's risky. It's scary. It's definitely not the safe way to learn. It would be way easier for me to easier and safer to grab Rosetta Stone and, learn from from my home, but I like to take that internal safety that I create inside of myself by the way that I think, the way that I show up in the world. I like to carry that with me into uncomfortable situations and then learn as much as I can.
1,000%. So you're in this class, and the teacher or the professora says something to you, and you kind of go deer in headlights. You say something, something comes out. Do the people in your class, do they speak English as a second language to help guide you, or is everything in Spanish and you're forced now to sink or swim? I
Okay,
mean, was it
so
that extreme?
semester one, when I was there, was with a whole classroom of American exchange students who were from various different universities. So they were from all over the United States, and we were all in a class together, but we were asked to only speak Spanish the entire time that we were in the class. Then semester two, I was literally at the Universidad de Sevilla. I was in the university classes. I was with all Spanish students. There were a few, just so happened to be a few exchange students, maybe from other places. But in general, no, it was full immersion in the second semester. So
Wow. You dove in and sink or swim, and I'm imagining that you swam. And uh, do you still remember Spanish today? Can you still speak it?
yes, sí, hablo
Awesome.
español. I forget words sometimes, but if you put me in a Spanish speaking place, it usually bubbles back to the surface, and I struggle a little bit with vocabulary. But after I'm there for a minute, I'm kind of back in it.
Why is it that in Spanish class, I remember level one, I want to say sixth grade, they taught us "Donde está la biblioteca?" I don't even know why that was one of the first things I remember learning, but why did they teach us that? I wonder.
It's a great question. I mean, it's a better question would be ¿Dónde están los baños? Right? Like where are the bathrooms?
Me.
I mean, we don't need to know where the biblioteca is. We need to know where the baño is.
This is fair. Yes. Well, so a great example of you being learning through immersion. Where are other stories in your life that you've learned through immersion that have been challenging opportunities for you?
Yeah, and maybe it's immersion, maybe it's other ways, but like I think it's more of just this whole idea of just I just dive in and then I figure it out. That's what I would say it
Mhm.
is. I just dive in, I go for it, and I figure it out. And so I after I left Spain, I was like, wow, I've acquired this skill and I can teach Spanish because I struggled to learn it. And so I can teach it because I know all the tricks and hacks that I learned. So I became a Spanish teacher.
Wow.
And I did that for
Okay.
7 years. So I taught middle
Wow.
school, high school, and community college. And I found that to be mostly incredibly enjoyable. The thing that did not work for me was I was like, this, I can't make this amount of money. Like, this is not a sustainable income. So sadly, that was a big driver for me to leave that profession. I like to make money. I like to create resources through, different avenues. And it was hard for me to see if I'm spending this much time of my day here, I just couldn't see other ways to make it work. And then, there were other factors as well that I was like, oh, there's just more. There's more for me. I want more for myself. So once I got to college level, I figured something out. I loved adult learners. And there was something so fun about advising them. So I had to be an advisor once I was teaching in a community college. I had to be an advisor for a certain group of students. And I loved helping them map their future and think about their goals and start to orient themselves towards a path that they wanted to take themselves down. And so I had this whole aha of like, I really love helping adults learn. At that point, I was very much on my own self development journey, and I started to see, wow, there could be some crossover here. And eventually got into the world of leadership development, learning and development inside of companies.
Okay. All right. Well, so pause. So before we go into what that looks like, you said that you're on this journey.
Mhm.
You figured out you're on a journey of self development. In that stage, when you are going from middle school to community college teacher, somewhere there's a journey of self development. Can
Mhm.
you give us a couple details around what self development meant for you at that
Sure.
time?
Okay. Are you ready for this?
Oh yeah.
I watched the movie The Secret. You
Oh,
remember that
nice.
movie? Okay.
Oh yeah.
So 2010, I think it was my mom actually who shared that movie with me and then the book, and I opened up the part of me that always innately knew that, basically what it's saying is our thoughts create our reality. I since believe that there's a lot more to it than just that. However, there is a lot to this idea of how we orient our minds will shape our future. And so I got really passionate about how am I orienting my mind to shape my future. And it really dovetailed with helping these college students to shape their future. And so I started, kind of thinking about, well, how can I continue to support people in shaping their future, being the best version of themselves, and to get paid for that? And I wasn't quite ready for the entrepreneurial journey at that point. I actually like quit my job and tried the entrepreneurial thing, and it was an epic failure.
Pause. Yes, tell us more. Tell us more. Because
So,
for the listeners out there, Adair is incredible at what she does today, and it's not always sunshine and roses and cotton
no.
candy when you get started. Tell us more.
No, it was really ugly and messy. I was on the high. So it happens with a lot of people when they first discover self development and the power of our minds and the power of positivity and all of that, which, obviously I'm so wise now. I know a lot of the pitfalls that I was falling into at that point, but I needed to experience it. That again, kind of going back to like I need to experience it. I need to go into it. And I'm okay with failure. So I decided I'm going to quit my job. I wrote a book called Live with Intention because I said I love this idea of like shaping our future with our thoughts, with our goals, with our, mapping that path for ourselves. And I for about a year I did speaking, I wrote a book, I coached a little bit, I got a coaching certification, and this was like in my late 20s. And I learned a lot, and I recognized at some point I was like, I'm not earning what I thought I would earn. I'm going into debt to like make this happen, and I'm not getting the returns to like justify it. And I got scared, right? Like I got scared. And so I was like, what can I do? And I actually, for a brief time, went back and taught just to kind of get myself out of the fear place. Cause that happens sometimes. We, get to a place where we just need to feel back into that place of safety and not be in a place of fear. And I recognized I was in such a place of fear that the next best step for me was to get to safety. And for me, then safety that I needed was okay, I'm just going to go back in the classroom. I'm going to teach for a year. And I started working on a master's degree in learning and development because I knew I think I can take this into an organization. And I learned like these are the careers that nobody ever tells you exist when you're growing up, right? You like either want to be a teacher or a scientist or whatever it might be, but the careers that they taught us about, there's thousands and thousands of careers that didn't even exist, right? By the time I'd graduated, it's just this weird reality that we set our kids up for. Um, I'm really mindful of that now as I have 7-year-old twins. But yeah, this whole idea of just getting back to safety, starting a master's degree, and then really like once I was in that and I felt good and I was in my master's degree then I found an opportunity to work in learning inside of Rosetta Stone. So it was a nice stepping stone because I was into language. They needed help on their learning team doing learning and development for their customers who were implementing Rosetta Stone. So, and I got to dual being inside of classrooms, which I was familiar with, and being inside of companies which I wasn't familiar with. And inside of those companies, I was working with learning teams, HR teams, leadership teams that would then be the groups I would work with later in my career. So it was kind of like this, this stepping stone. So I landed at Rosetta Stone for a while and then finished my master's degree. And a couple years after that, I found a job that was perfect for me, which was doing leadership development
Okay.
inside of a learning team at Humana, large
Okay,
organization.
big company, big
Yeah.
well, so let's back up for 1 second. So you found a job inside of leadership development in Humana, and you've been working with companies now for some time. So you have some experience in companies, you're working with Humana. What was that, kind of birth by fire into companies like for you? Learning the jargon, learning HR
I
and
loved it.
executive speak? Yeah.
I love to learn. So I loved it.
Mhm.
To me, it was like a new challenge, right? Like I learned a lot of the education jargon. I learned the philosophy in education. I learned like that whole world. And then I got to move into the world of business, which I appreciate because it was much more commerce focused. I didn't realize how much I loved like commerce, finances, money. I mean, I know I left teaching because I didn't feel like I was going to be able to financially sustain myself. However, I didn't realize I would like some of the financial aspects of learning about a business, which were, even though I was in learning, and didn't have a
Mhm.
whole lot of access to all of that, it was still this new way of thinking that isn't there in academia. It isn't there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm wondering. So you mentioned the finances, the money, and it showed up before because you felt you weren't earning what you were worth. You wanted to earn more.
Yeah.
What has your narrative or relationship look like with money? Going
Great
from
question.
through college, through teaching for 7 years, through now you're coaching executives. What's your internal narrative about money?
Yeah. So really great question. I would say I've had huge shifts, and I'm very tuned into. I would say I don't know if you would call it a philosophy about money or a mindset about money, whatever it might be. But it also kind of became like a learning obsession of mine was to like learn about what is that mind, what's the money mindset or, the blueprint that I have for money. So I've done a lot of like internal work on like, how was I programmed by the way I was raised and really worked on that. So the interesting thing is when I stopped working inside of companies, so I mentioned, I was working at Humana, I was there for several years, and then I was working inside of another smaller company for a few years, same type of role, leadership development. It's very much what I do today, but I work for myself now. And so when I transitioned into entrepreneurship, it just like exploded the money possibilities for me because I had always been in places where it was kind of the fixed income mentality, and then I put myself in the entrepreneurial role, and then it was like, "Oh, I have to show up differently because now I am responsible for my," I mean, I was responsible when I was inside of a company too, because I had to deliver or else I was gonna get fired. But at the end of the day, you know how this goes. As an entrepreneur, I am responsible for all of it myself. And what I loved about that is to a certain degree, I mean, I recognize there are probably limits. To a certain degree, I had the ability to make limitless income, right? Like there's no one saying you can only earn this much money. This is your salary. And if you get a raise or a promotion, you can only get this much because that's what the company will allow. No, I mean, if I dialed things in and I could dramatically increase my income. Um,
Amazing. I'm wondering, uh, learner, obsessed with learning. I love it. Humbly curious, obsessed with learning. Great philosophy. So there's a point when you branch on your own, first entrepreneurial venture, and there's an epic failure, and then you get back to teaching to give yourself that year to get safety back, and then you move into this role with Humana, and then entrepreneurship, and then sky's the limit. You took off, and that's where we are now. And if we can go back, you know, I sense this learning. I sense that there's always this a limitless opportunity in you. You still had an epic fail at the beginning, and I wonder from where you are now to then, just that seems so paramount because so many entrepreneurs get out there, they get beat down for the first time, and they never get back up.
yeah, it
So you,
scarred me. It scarred me for
mhm,
a long time. I'll be frank about that. Like it scarred me for
mhm.
years, and I was very afraid to go out on my own. And I think I don't even really know what the turning point was. I do. The place where I landed after Humana was a small business, and they were two very entrepreneurial minded guys who they wanted to build this really strong culture inside of their small company, and we had this awesome experience working together. And they knew the whole time I wanted to have my own business. Like I was like, my goal in the future is to have my own business, and I thought they were going to help me do that, and things just didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. And it just got to the point where I was like, you know what? Nobody's going to do this unless I do it. I keep leaning on a crutch, maybe because I had the past failure. I keep trying to lean on a crutch of somebody else. But at the end of the day, it's me. Like I have to go out. I have to make it happen. And I'll tell you, I decided to leave that organization. And they told me, I had nothing in writing. They told me, well, we're going to give you a contract to work with us for a year. And so I was like, okay, cool. That kind of gives me like a foundation of like, I've got this one client. I know I can at least lean in and be with this one client, and then I can get some other clients. And then all of that blew up. So I went from
Oh,
thinking I was going to have this like six-figure contract my first year to zero.
oh,
And that was, that
oh.
was 2019. It wasn't that
Did
long
that bring
ago.
back up old scars? Did that just kind of hit you in the face and
Yeah, but
wow.
it's all good because again, it kind of goes back to there has to be a level of courage in stepping into
Mm,
this. And for me, it's always been about I have to be fully in it. If I'm not fully in and fully integrated into like, yes, this is what I'm doing, then things just don't quite jibe for me quite as well. Um,
mm.
so yeah,
Well,
yeah.
amazing, and that brings us forward to today,
Yeah.
and, I saw your email address, and I'd never seen that email before, so
Mhm.
I'm wondering,
First lead
lead
you.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, first lead you. Talk about what you're doing today and lead us, please. I'd love to hear,
Thank you.
words from Adair, please.
Yes. So, from the time I started my business in 2019 to now, obviously we've had a global pandemic. I was doing a lot of more things in person. Now I'm doing a lot more things online. I'm doing some things in person, but really soon after I left my job and didn't get that contract, I actually attended the exchange training that we were talking about at the beginning. And attending that 5-day training just like blew my mind, opened my world. And it was like, this is it. This is the thing that I'm going to take with all my experience, with leadership development and inside of organizations. I'm going to take this model and I'm just going to run with it. And that's really what I've been doing for the last couple years. And of course, as I said, for since the pandemic, I've been doing that all online, which has been awesome. And the as we said at the beginning, the exchange method is all about questions, conversation designs. You mentioned appreciative inquiry because it rests heavy on the shoulders of appreciative inquiry. And it's all about helping to bring out the collective wisdom of a group. So I mostly work with groups in helping them to come up with a shared vision, values, purpose, strategy, or really solve any problem that they have by bringing out the wisdom of the group. It's a holistic way of designing and facilitating conversations, which you're very familiar with, Matt. So I spend a lot of my time doing that. I do some one on one coaching as well. That's something that I kind of stopped doing, but I'm back doing a little bit more of that now. So I coach leaders typically inside of organizations, really who are looking to become better versions of themselves from the inside out. So that kind of goes back to the first lead you. Even though I do a lot of group work, my core belief, my core philosophy is that we first must lead ourselves. And part of what we do at Exchange as well is our Awakening Conscious Leadership training and program that I'm very intimately involved with, which is based on the work of Dr. Danny Friedland and his book called Leading Well from Within. And it very much is a brain-based way of helping ourselves to be more resourced so that we can be a better leader, both for ourselves, for our families, for our teams. And what I mean by that is how am I thinking? Where am I placing my attention? How am I being mindful in a way where I am resourced on the inside so that I don't blow up, right? Or if I do blow up, I know how to go back and get myself to a place of equanimity and resolve whatever I may, it's not about being perfect. We're all human at the end of the day, but the first lead you piece is all about my belief in, even if I'm facilitating groups, whatever's happening inside of me is foundational. It's core and it's going to show up in everything that I do. So if I want to be an awesome facilitator or if I want to be an amazing mom to my daughters, I have to be very tuned in to what's happening inside of me in my internal world, how I'm thinking, my mindfulness practices. I'm really, really dedicated to meditation, journaling, very strong in my morning routine and kind of like starting my day out right. So that's where the first lead you comes in.
Well, let's take a quick dive into that. You talk about your morning routine, journaling, meditation. If I were a fly on the wall, and if I'm right there, I see your wall. It's beautiful, by the way. As you said, stylistic, and the space is beautiful. If I'm there and I'm witnessing you going through a morning routine, what would I see?
Great question. So on my best mornings, because sometimes it varies a little bit, I
You mean you're not perfect?
oh
Okay.
I'm totally
So,
I'm a total flawed human, and I've learned to
okay.
finally just let myself be that, because otherwise I spend a lot of wasted energy beating myself up, right?
Amazing.
Um,
Good. Mhm.
So I love, first of all, to make a green juice in my Vitamix. So cucumber, celery, spinach, avocado, sometimes some lemon, because this is a holistic thing, right? It starts with what we put in our body. Our nutrition is important. So I start with that. And then I drink coffee usually after that, like a half hour after that or whatever. But typically I start with the green juice. Then I meditate 10 to 20 minutes in a what I call a seated practice. I use the unified mindfulness way of meditating and talking about mindfulness. Usually 10 to 20 minutes of that. And then I go make my coffee. And then I'm in my journal and I journal gratitude every single day. And I do gratitude for everything, which means I'm thanking the good, the bad, the ugly, the wonderful, the beautiful, the happy, the difficult, all of that as a way to acknowledge and and reconnect with the truth of what's happening in my life at the moment. And I found that that is really important. I'm not trying to deny the hard things. I'm not trying to put a pretty picture over top of the hard things. I'm saying, no, thank you for my daughter getting diagnosed with COVID. And it's just a way to like be truthful and acknowledge what's going on without always having to necessarily look for a silver lining in it. Just acknowledge it.
Wow, acknowledge you're not holding back any punches. You're not blaming. You're not a victim. You're highly aware and appreciating whatever comes at you. That's amazing. Okay,
And
please
then
continue. That's
yeah,
awesome.
and then after that, I,
Mm.
sometimes I am reading a book and I'll spend some time reading, or I'm reflecting on a question. A lot of my personal practice goes beyond my routine. I would say that's kind of the core of the routine, what I just described. I usually go on a run or do some type of an exercise during that time as well. And then I would say, throughout the day, I'm really being mindful of what's happening inside of me. And I'm very much a believer in what I call self inquiry. And it's what questions we talk about, questions and conversations in groups with the work that we do with exchange, right? But this is, what questions am I asking inside of myself? And what does that open up and what becomes possible? So, a lot of times, what we do is we, instead of asking a question, we come up with a conclusion or a story based on something we've experienced and how it went in the past. But if I will go into inquiry and ask myself something like, what will it take to blank? What will it take? And I'm not necessarily trying to answer that question. I'm leaving that question open. And I'm seeing, what does the universe bring to me based on the question that I'm asking? What wisdom arrives if I ask a question, just like when I'm with a group? What wisdom arrives from that group, comes out of that group, bubbles up from that group if I present a question? And if I ask you, it's going to be one thing. If I ask somebody else, it's going to be something totally different. I don't want to have all the answers. I just want to ask the questions, and I want to receive the answers from a higher source and move through life uh, with that. And that's tough because I love certainty. I love order. I love organization. As we kind of went back, if we go back to the very beginning, I love that. I love to create that sense of, control. But at the end of the day, I really don't think that we have much control, but we absolutely have the ability to ask better questions inside of ourselves and see what comes out of that. And also, as I said, with the gratitude, to be grateful for it all. And if I were to boil life down to like two things, it's the inquiry, it's asking questions instead of having the answers, and appreciation. Being grateful for it all, being grateful for everything, saying thank you for the big, small, big, bad, ugly, beautiful, whatever arises in our lives.
Adair, you have enlightened us. You've offered us a lot of wisdom today. I appreciate everything you've shared. I've taken a bunch of notes. I look forward to when this is published so I can learn from it again. How would someone get in touch with you or follow you on social media if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's been, first, I just want to say it's been awesome to be here with you, Matt, and really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for letting me tell my story and sharing. I also had a few ahas and some connected some dots. So thank you so much for the way you asked the questions and kind of got at different things, that you had me thinking about things I haven't thought about in a long time. So I deeply appreciate that, and you as well. If people want to find me, I'm easy to find. Adair Cates. You can find me on Instagram. My website is adaircates.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's probably the best way to find me. And then, as we've talked about several times today, the exchange approach, you can find out more about the exchange approach at the exchangeapproach.com. And I'm sure Matt can put the exact spelling of that in the show notes. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Adair. It has been a privilege and a pleasure and honor. And keep spreading that great energy out there and keep creating something amazing. Keep asking questions. Look forward to connecting soon.
Awesome, Matt. Thanks so much. See you soon.
Pleasure.